For the first time, we are getting a look inside the files of discredited former pathologist Dr. Michael Belenky. Charlotte Shaw's sister was murdered, but in an exclusive interview with CTV News, she tells us the mistakes Dr. Belenky made in the autopsy have been almost as difficult on her family as the crime itself. And now she is demanding answers from the Alberta government. Bridget Brown reports.
Charlotte Shaw and her sister Angela were inseparable. The hole in Charlotte's world when her sister was murdered is difficult to put into words.
I still think about her and what happened, probably half of the day. It's almost 3 years.
Angela's killer is a young offender. He pled guilty to killing her with a knife and an axe and is serving his sentence in Alberta Hospital. Charlotte was trying to put the devastating details behind her when a familiar name started to appear in news reports.
Dr. Mike Belenky.
She remembers the Calgary pathologist who performed her sister's autopsy. Charlotte describes his process as stressful and disorganized, with the pathologist himself calling her again and again to ask her to gather information like dental records.
It was very stressful, and it was a lot of phone calls, and I probably explained what happened, 100 times in the first week.
When Charlotte heard of another botched Belenky autopsy, she asked Alberta Justice to review Angela's case. Their findings shocked her.
I felt anger. I felt a lot of anger about it all and fear.
Dr. Graham Dowling, Edmonton's chief medical examiner, did a second autopsy on her sister. His pathology report found several obvious errors in Dr. Belenky's autopsy. Dr. Belenky's report indicated Angela wore white underwear. She wore a turquoise thong. He missed a quilt and pieces of tape the body was wrapped in. And what disgusted Charlotte the most, Belenky wrote the axe injury to Angela's head was on the left side when it was clearly on the right. The second autopsy does note that the mistakes are not enough to change the outcome of the murder case, but Charlotte feels they're so obvious they show a lack of care.
I feel like she was a tax-paying citizen, and just horrifying that someone in this position of trust could make any mistake, even a spelling mistake, like she was just treated like a joke.
And Bridget joins us now. So Bridget, what did Dr. Belenky and Alberta Justice have to say about Charlotte's concerns?
I tried to get a response from Dr. Belenky, but couldn't. He's no longer registered to practice medicine in Alberta, and he hasn't responded to attempts to reach him. Now, as for Alberta Justice, it's changed its autopsy practices because of cases like this starting last month. But Charlotte found the response she got from the government quite unsatisfactory. And a third-party lawyer we had look over this situation says the government is opening itself up to more lawsuits because of its position. I'll have that part of the story coming up tomorrow.
Our exclusive investigation into the files of former pathologist Dr. Michael Belenky continues tonight. Families affected by his mistakes are demanding an apology. So CTV took their request to the Alberta government. But it would appear they shouldn't hold their breath. Bridget Brown reports.
I just think the whole thing is shoddy, and it really treated my sister with disrespect.
Charlotte Shaw's sister was brutally murdered, so it was even more upsetting when Dr. Michael Belenky muddled the autopsy. Things like saying her underwear was white when it was turquoise, and mixing up which side of her head was bludgeoned. A second autopsy found the errors. It says they didn't affect the outcome of the court case because the killer pled guilty. But Charlotte disagrees. The killer has never shown remorse. She wonders if the mistake-riddled post-mortem contributes to that.
I think her killer is going to not ever take it seriously because it wasn't treated that seriously.
All Charlotte wants now is some acknowledgement of the errors from Alberta Justice.
An apology would be wonderful. I guess it's not going to change what happened, but it would make me feel like they finally maybe give my sister some acknowledgement that she was, a human being, not just a case number.
Another family wants an apology too. Belenky's mistaken autopsy called their son's death a homicide, and because of that, their older son was placed into foster care. Now they're suing Belenky and the government.
What I would like for my clients, and I think what is essential for my clients, is to come out of this with a sincere apology, recovery of some money, some compensation for damages, and a certain level of respect.
But anyone waiting for an apology from Alberta Justice will have to keep waiting. It says, all criminal cases that were done by Dr. Belenky were investigated. That investigation found no evidence that the outcome to any criminal cases were affected. Chris Levy with the University of Calgary says if the accused in Charlotte's sister's murder had pleaded not guilty, Dr. Belenky's many mistakes could have totally changed the outcome.
I would unquestionably be questioning how much attention the pathologist had paid to what they were actually doing if they couldn't record correctly what the victim was wearing and they couldn't distinguish left from right. The entire diagnostic process connected with the autopsy might give rise to a reasonable doubt.
More than that, Levy believes the ongoing problems in the medical examiner's office in Alberta makes for a larger problem for the government.
How much faith can people actually have in the pathology and autopsy process in Alberta?
And Bridget joins us now. So Bridget, is the government doing anything to address problems in forensic pathology?
Tara, the department has made some changes to how autopsies are done in the province. As of March 1st, a second autopsy like the one Charlotte had to fight for is now standard practice. There's some question as to how efficiently that process is going to be able to be carried out, though. Right now, there are 15 vacancies for medical examiner positions in Alberta. There's some doubt as to whether filling those positions is a realistic goal with the available pathologists out there. I'll take a closer look at that shortage, and we'll hear some more truly startling errors in other Belenky files. That's coming up tomorrow.
Okay, Bridget, thank you. Our exclusive investigation into pathology errors in Alberta continues tonight. After our first story aired Monday, we heard from another woman whose sister's autopsy was so badly mishandled, her family worried they might have buried the wrong person. And there are growing concerns the government isn't doing enough to fix the problem. Bridget Brown explains.
Whose body is this?
Tammy Rhodes' sister died of a suspected drug overdose. At least that's what Dr. Michael Belenky concluded. Here's what he wrote on her autopsy.
The gallbladder contains a small amount of watery bile without stones.
There's just one problem. Carol Verlaine Gilbertson didn't have a gallbladder.
My sister's gallbladder was removed several years before.
The autopsy describes Verlaine as 5'7", with brown eyes and brown hair. This is her, blue eyes, 5'4", blonde hair.
The issue was, who is this? And whose body is this? Did we receive the proper body?
The many errors led Tammy and her family to question Belenky's conclusion that Verlaine died of a prescription drug overdose. She had no history of taking any drugs other than her many prescriptions.
There wasn't a pill missing that shouldn't have been according to the dosages on the bottles.
And then there was her apartment door. Neighbors found it wide open. A second autopsy came to the same conclusion, but the family has too many questions to be sure.
With her apartment door open, had somebody gone in and maybe murdered her?
Alberta Justice emphasizes that Belenky's errors didn't change the outcome to any criminal cases. But the family accuses the government of hiding just how badly Alberta's pathology system has failed. Liberal candidate Dr. David Swan agrees.
One has to really raise some serious questions about what's happened to our quality control in this healthcare system, and I think this government has to take a big part of the responsibility here.
The government says new measures will address the problems.
We have seen a couple of situations in Alberta where there have been errors detected, and I know Alberta Health Services has taken steps to increase peer review.
That means as of March 1st, 2 pathologists began reviewing every homicide file. The province is trying to hire 15 pathologists right now to fill gaps in the system. But Chris Levy of the University of Calgary points out that new measures and better staffing levels will be a difficult and costly endeavor for the government if the province can't find the doctors to fill the gaps.
So it's going to cost money. My own view is that reinforcing public faith in the accuracy and integrity of the criminal justice system is actually worth a penny or two.
Bridget joins us now. So Bridget, what has become of Dr. Belenky?
We tried to reach him for this series and were unable to. He was questioned by the Omaha Police Department in connection with a double homicide in Nebraska while he was working there. That connection is still unclear and that case is unsolved. As for the pathologist shortage in Alberta, it's actually a worldwide problem. There simply aren't enough trained professionals. Alberta Health Services is trying to hire 15 more this year and needs another 8 in Calgary alone over the next 2 years. That's a big job considering every province in Canada is vying for the same doctors for their own pathology problems.
It is indeed. Okay, Bridget, thank you.